Hello, good evening. So, as always, how are you doing? Feel free as you jump on to let me know how you are. So, you know me as far as with tarot, like many of you who are in our group, we do love tarot. I believe we're all on a lifelong journey to explore the cards and what they mean to us. That way we can help ourselves, and if we read for others, we can help others as far as assessing where we are, say, with a situation or issue. And then it's like a way of having these conversations and determining how best to move forward. Now, unfortunately, with reversals, they do have a bit of a negative connotation related to them. I have heard many times since I have started reading tarot 5 years ago that there is enough negativity in life, so why would I read, say, reversals? I've heard that said of, people. And I get that. I mean, the main thing, like we've always talked about in our group, is what resounds with you. If reversals do not resound with you whatsoever, then don't do them. Or if you get them in your reading and again they make you uncomfortable, again they don't resound, then turn them upright. Um, I would say, be mindful maybe of which ones were reversed in case the upright version of the energy doesn't resonate. But there's, again, no hard rules with tarot. And so I had mentioned in a previous post how I'm pulling from different tarot authors with knowledge on this to help us build on our own knowledge base. And so there aren't many books on tarot reversals that are out there, which I've been reading this book and it goes into, like Mary Greer goes into how she's been reading for well over 30 years. Nobody's really written a book about reversals. So this is entitled The Complete Book of Tarot Reversals, and it is by Mary Greer. And in the intro, it goes into all of her various accomplishments. Barbara Moore, she is an awesome tarot deck author. I really love Barbara's work, so I'm a fan of hers. And so I've been reading, and I have quite a few cards pulled out. Initially, I was thinking I was just going to go over the full, but the more in depth that I read through the book, Mary provided so many great examples. I want to review those tonight to see if maybe I can maybe give some food for thought as to why reversals are not all negative. Because Mary in her book very much wants to really hit home with that's not the case always with a reversal. So she says here the explanations given in books for reverse cards are rarely more than a few lines, yet in the average spread, half of the cards will be inverted. Now, a big portion of that is dependent on how you shuffle your cards. So, like some things in her book that she mentioned is if you have all 78 cards and they are pointing face down, and you just take your hands and you're doing this to mix them together, and then say you pull from that, you have a higher chance of getting reversals. Or if you do like a bridge shuffle with the edges where you take two piles and as you're shuffling you're making into one, and say you mix it up based on how you intuitively feel and you're vibing with your deck, you might even do a little bit of overhanded shuffling. And then during doing this, depending on how you're shuffling, you may get more reversals that way. And again, we're trying to overcome the negative interpretations of the myth, the stigma around these reversals. That is part of her intro with this. Now, for me, honestly, when I do my, when I mix my cards together, when I'm doing a shuffle, I don't come out with a lot of negative, not negatives, but reversals. Um, I start with all of mine right sided up, like which is what you're supposed to do, like the normal direction. And then I feel like I'm getting a pretty good even shuffle with mine. Now, I have had when I read for other people, I allow them to work with my decks, and that's a personal decision. Okay, you may not want to do that if you read for others. Again, you do what resounds with you because we all read differently. But when I've read for other people, I tell them to shuffle it in whichever way is most comfortable with them. Ideally, I want their energy on these cards. I want them to shuffle until they feel that they're complete. And then, of course, thinking about what is bothering them as they're shuffling. What is it that they need clarity on, thinking on this? So, kind of taking a little bit of a deep dive on this. So I really like, and we'll get a little bit more into this. Mary really likes the Hangman as the card to be kind of like, I don't know if a better word, like the mascot for reverse cards. If there's one to think about, it would be the Hangman. Because think about it. This is the point in time on the Fool's journey through the major arcana where a lot has happened, and the Fool on their journey is taking a rest and seeing the world from a different perspective, like we do when the card is in reversed. It's seeing things that are not comfortable. So, like to hang upside down is not a comfortable thing to do to gain insight, which is represented by the halo around his head. Now, you see how one leg is secured by rope, which is the straight leg, while the other one is free. So the one leg that's free wants to go ahead and take off and move forward on the journey. But because of their vulnerable, fragile, maybe wounded state, this energy is not ready to do that as of yet. And they very much may feel like their arms are tied, or hands are tied would be a common saying, to where they don't feel like they're in a good place to move forward. So that's what we're kind of examining with this reversal energy of our upright cards. So think about like when they're normally upright, which is what we're used to. Think about it like being on the road and you're driving. Okay, it's made of concrete, you've got lines, you may have your Google Maps app pulled up on your phone, you know where you're going, right? Well, when we're delving into reversals, I want you to think of this like having a four-wheeler or a bicycle. You're going off this road that's well known and traveled and delving into a place where there is no path. There's no consistency. You don't have that illumination. You don't know where you're going. There's a lot of bumps in the road. It's uncomfortable. Generally speaking, when we're delving into things that make us uncomfortable, we need to look into that. Like the main question, which is asked by so many of our little children that we lose as we get older, would be why? Why does this make me feel uncomfortable? And that is why predominantly, again, a lot of people who do tarot, reversals make them uncomfortable. Again, because there's not a lot of info out there on them, you know? And then given the current myths that surround it, it's not well defined and so forth. Oh, and I see that. Thank you, honey. I see my hubby's on here. So let's see here. So the way that Mary Greer looks at the Hangman, she says he epitomizes the nature of reversed cards. As Mary writes, this card is about total surrender to an opposing point of view, which is what he's doing. He's getting a different perspective, reversing your consciousness and imagining differently. So even if it does not resound with you to read reversals, it's always great to be open to a different understanding or perspective, just like with anything in life, right? So Mary says that the interpretations are her book in her book are meant to stimulate our thinking on this, and first and foremost, it would be the intuitive meaning that you assign to your cards would trump mine or anybody else's because it has more meaning and significance, say for you, or even the person you read for, the querent, even their upright meaning of the cards. I've had this happen where the person I'm reading for, they see something totally different than, say, the traditional meaning of the card. Does that make their interpretation wrong? Answer is no. All of it has value. And what I was reading in her book is, so when tarot very first came out, it was known as Tarocchi or Tarocchi. I think it's Tarocchi is how it was pronounced. That was back in the 15th century. So looking back, they could not find documentation of the various meanings that we assign to these cards till hundreds of years later. But mainly back during the birth of tarot, this was a game played initially by the wealthy, before it evolved and was used more so for divination, you know. So let's see here. And so when she was writing her book, she did say that, like, a lot of her interpretations of the cards in her book may very well reflect her experiences in life, which does play in how we interpret the cards. She had a lot of bad luck and various bad happenings that happened to her, various events. She acknowledges that. And that sometimes with reversals, they can represent adversity, you know. And we're going to go into that a little bit. And again, her interpretations are only suggestions. So again, she's not saying that she's the be-all, end-all with this. Again, we're visiting a different point of view with the cards. So she says, in truth, reversals are ways to see through to the other side. So those of you who are fans of, Stranger Things? That Netflix show. Think of the Upside Down in that show. It is parallel to the world as we know it, but it is a world that exists. It's a mirror, but it's a different one. It is not a mirror image, but it coexists with the parallel, which is what we know. That's a way of looking at reversals. She says, reversals present opportunities to reach closer to energies, feeling, realities, and potential not easy to access. Let's see here. And she says here and I'm going to read this because I really like this passage. Despite their rich potential, reversals are usually read in very limited or simplistic ways. You can characterize each card as good or bad, which, I don't believe in that. Very much like Lindsay Mack says on her podcast, they all offer a medicine, which I do agree with, or use any other dualism. But do not be misled by the fallacy that a reversal merely switches the good and bad attributes of the card, although it may sometimes do so. When seen primarily as negative, reversals needlessly emphasize the irrational fears and suspicions that gather around the creative gifts of the spirit and psyche. None of the cards are absolutely good or bad. Each has meanings ranging from problematic to helpful. So she gives the example of the sun. The sun, for instance, can be happiness and joy, or sunburn and burnout. When reversed, the sun's effects are traditionally lessened rather than changed, so that the experience of either joy or burnout might be denied. However, the reversal can also tell you to look for the inner sun and its spiritual guiding light rather than seeing it only as an external source. So she does go quite a bit into different theorists and how well-known people in science and theology even view things in our world to try to make sense out of them. So a lot of theology's in this book. I'm not going to deep dive on that because that would be quite a bit. So going back to the hangman, so she calls this energy, I'm going to try to hold this up here, the wounded healer. And she says at one level, the image is about our own shame and the betrayal of our highest potential through the wounding that we have all experienced. By learning to change our misery and pain into fulfillment and understanding shown by the halo, we reserve our erroneous thoughts and interpretations of ourselves and of life into reality. And she went into kind of like what I talked about, when an inner psychological conflict gets too awful, life gets suspended and we get hung up. Life cannot go on. So that's when we're seeing the stoppage in the flow of life, intolerable suffering, as your wish to move with the right leg and the left refuses, and vice versa. And again, one leg is free while the other is tied. That reflects that. And so let's see what else here. So let's say you're doing a reading for yourself or even somebody else and you get mostly reverse cards. What do you do? Now, again, if it is not resonating to where that energy feels too distressful or uncomfortable, it is known in tarot that it could be that, say, yourself or whoever you're reading for may be too closed off and not ready. However, I like her viewpoint in this. What do you do? And so she was talking about this. There's more to reversals than simply negativity. You must judge whether it would be more distressing to such a person to abort the reading after seeing the cards that are drawn, or to interpret the cards and possibly confirm their fears. So I hate to say it, but we can do harm if we're reading even for ourselves and most of them turn out to be reversed, and then it's like a confirmation of our fears and doubts that may not have a firm foundation to begin with, but we have constructed, if that makes sense, to where, again, you can go ahead and turn them upright, or one solution, which I like that she came up with, is to start over with a new spread while asking the question, what will help the querent, or say even yourself, what will help me most at this time? Like, what do I need to know? So one technique she had like referenced here when you're starting out with reversals is to maybe pick one card at a time that would be reversed. To where, say, if you have one that's reversed in your reading, take your time to really think on that card. Observe the background like we have in past go lives, the main character. How does it look upside down? What does it make you think of? The imagery can take on new meanings. And I'm going to go over a couple examples of that now. So let's say the Five of Pentacles. Okay, you know the fives in tarot show conflict, right? Well, what happens if we take this card, we flip it upside down? The window becomes a door. It looks like a stained glass door. This would be a positive connotation of this card because it shows a door to be taken. This could actually show moving past this upright energy of the card, right? Being outside this building, being wounded, ill, needing help but not getting it, being very much in the cold outside. Then upside down, we've got a doorway. So this is very important. This is taking the door, right? And it looks like the tree. So it reminds me of the tree of life, looking at the pentacles, and it looks like branches. So it's all in what you see, right? So that's one example here. Let's see here. Another energy, because I'm going to go over a few here. How about the Tower? So we know this happens when there's this unavoidable event, happening, occurrence in life, and we're left reeling and feeling very vulnerable and very much feeling a loss, right? Well, let's say in our reading, it comes up in reverse. What do we see? And so what we see here, they're no longer falling downward, are they? You know how clouds represent how we don't have clarity about something? They're above the clouds. They're rising above that. At the bottom, you see that bolt of lightning and the smoke coming from the top of the tower. Again, they're overcoming that, and no, they're not through things yet. I'm not going to say that necessarily that, because you see above them, we still have what appears to be a jagged area, which is at the very foundation of this tower. But even without going into the pictures and what we're seeing, when it's in reverse, that means we're getting out of this energy. We're making that progression and moving past the upright energy of this card, which shows a positive movement, hopefully, where we rebuild, essentially. Let's see here. How about the Three of Cups? So when it's upright, it's about your community celebrating with friends, right? That's an example. What if it goes in reverse? What this could mean, and she gives this example in her book, for one of her querents, it was somebody who hung out with their friends too much and drank too much. So this is all about, maybe it's time to not spend so much time with certain people, observe if they're good or not for us, and maybe it's time to maybe not keep that cup so full in that particular reading, right? So that's another way of looking at that. Let's see what else here. Nine of Swords, the card of worry, right? Being in our heads on stuff. In reverse, what does that look like to you? Now, one example that she has in her book is this card, and she said that somebody said that the swords take on the appearance of a ladder and that it leads to an attic. So it almost does look like somebody hanging outside of the attic, okay, which if you think about it, it would be rising above this to obtain maybe a bit more clarity, okay. Also, it could reflect supraconscious. So we're talking about, or supraconsciousness, where you're thinking about like your faith, your spirituality, but it's rising above these swords. But it's also this theoretical ladder that's constructed with all these various swords. So it could show all the various obstacles and difficulties in your life that are actually going to lead to a positive outcome, not necessarily a negative one. Let's see here. What else? Another energy. Let's see a few here. The Ten of Wands. Again, the end of a suit. Okay, this is being very burdened and weighed down, correct? Upside down, it's releasing those burdens, letting this energy go, which would be the upright, it's releasing it. So this is another example of a reversal with a positive interpretation. How about another one? The Ten of Swords. Okay, where someone's exhausted. Okay, reverse it. So the hilt of the sword is going to have more weight. So now we're looking at the swords falling out of the back. And then they're going to be more so inclined to stand up and move forward without all these swords. It's releasing so that they can move forward, right? Let's see here. Another example. Let's see. I'll go ahead and do two more. The Seven of Wands. So this is like standing your ground about an issue, a situation, a relationship. Well, if it's in reverse, it's going to make us think, maybe we shouldn't be so quick to be on the defensive and defend whatever this is or who this is, and to question it. The Devil, where we are willingly chaining ourselves to this energy that is not good for us, but it's all based in vices. You know, we all have a vice of some sort. Now, that is a very intense, strong energy. When it's in the reverse, we're leaving this energy. You know, the devil is literally on their head. So that is a good outcome, correct? So again, from all these multiple examples I just did, it does reflect how reversals are not all bad and all negative. And I agree with Mary Greer that we need to dispel that because it's not accurate. And so she does encourage us to think about a few things when we get reversals. What is being blocked or delayed? What am I not seeing in myself? Where am I experiencing difficulties? What am I breaking through or overturning? What new concept or idea awaits my recognition? Where is the magic here? So again, just sit with the card and think about it. So going on, she goes forward to talk about there's all sorts of various reasons that cards in your reading may come up reversed, such as the energy normally described by the card that's upright may be blocked, repressed, denied, rejected, or resisted. The querent or ourselves, we could be overturning, getting out from under, like we're talking about with like the devil and the tower, breaking free of, rejecting, refusing, or turning away from the condition pictured. So like the Eight of Swords, okay, where we're very much creating our own problems, we're our own worst enemy, okay, but we can leave this energy at any time. We turn it in reverse. The swords fall away and the blindfold falls away. So we are moving past this energy with this reversal. Let's see here. And she goes into all sorts of various things. Sometimes we project as well. And she gives the example of the Emperor card in this. It may indicate the projection of one's own repressed aggressiveness onto somebody else who is wielding power inappropriately or ineffectually, and that's with the Emperor upside down. Or you could over-idealize their strength and command. What else here? And she compares a reversed tarot card to a shaman, which is known as, say, like a Native American man or woman who was a healer. So she references the shamanic or magical view in particular, ask you to enter the card and journey to an Alice in Wonderland realm in order to bring back a vital message or understanding. It suggests viewing things from a different perspective than that of the ordinary world, and assumes that we normally view, or what we normally view as metaphor, is a living reality, and that what we call reality is merely a dream. So very much Alice in Wonderland vibes. So it's like, are you daring to go down the theoretical rabbit hole and have what you believe something to be uprooted and to where it doesn't make sense, like is common in reversals. This view represents the esoteric, that is, secret or hidden teachings. Let's see here. And it could also show people who are defying the social norms that as humans we were not born knowing, but we are raised to know. So an example of this would be the Empress, and what she wrote really resounded, so I'm going to read it. Several characteristics may be at work in a single reverse card, resulting in multiple meanings. The reversed Empress, so I'll go ahead and reverse her. Okay. The reversed Empress, whose upright meanings include being feminine, nurturing, relating, can indicate not acting in a feminine way. If we look deeper, this may be because you are breaking through family patterns of nurturing or resisting the influence of your mother, who is emotionally unavailable to you. You might, however, see your actions as empowering rather than lacking, especially if you are inwardly questioning society's expectations of women in order to discover how to be feminine without having to fulfill everyone else's needs and expectations. So you could be countering the norm and exploring the full range of the divine feminine, which I know is a relatively new thing in society with various opinions. But to my understanding, when especially our younger generation doesn't want to identify as either, like he or him or her or she, and they say them, my understanding of that is they are rejecting these labels that society puts on them, and they want to identify as neither. That would be an example of that. So it is, again, challenging the upright understanding, which you could also say would be like the societal norms that we generally grow up learning and adapting to. Let's see here. And again, she goes into, again, even if it goes against the traditional meaning, your intuitive meaning counters it all, even for your querent, even if it has nothing to do with the correct textbook meaning of a card. It's what you see, whether it be upright or reversed. This book is very thorough. So I would say so far, if this is interesting to you, I would definitely recommend checking the book out. So I'm going to end things tonight with talking about the Fool. And like I said with my post today, I'm not going to just go exclusively on this book. I'm going to keep revisiting it to go over all the cards, sometimes more than one, I think, on these go lives. So it shouldn't take us long to go through all 78 again. But I feel like it opens up that can of worms to have that discussion or thoughts on what do you see with a reverse card. Why not? What does it hurt to look, right? And see what we come up with. So, as we know, the Fool is all about zero. Okay, so it's all about like an egg. There's full potential there. So this card represents spirit just prior to manifestation, when all possibilities exist. And this is where somebody is very much following their instincts, okay? Very naively, not sure, they're not really sure what they're getting themselves into. But what I really like is how she points out that the doggy that's running beside the fool is like very like symbolic of being hounded, that keyword hounded, by our instincts, which is what it's our internal compass, correct? Now, let's say we're going into the reverse energy of this card. So what it does show is someone's not ready to take that leap off that cliff. And if anything, you got to kind of stop and wonder why. Why is there hesitancy? What's holding them back from taking that theoretical leap? Maybe they're feeling vulnerable. They're scared. It could be life circumstances to where they're not bright-eyed and optimistic and just going to take that leap. They could be concerned about how they're going to be perceived by others, because when we're in the upright energy, the fool does not care if others perceive them as being foolish, green, any type of negative connotation of this energy. This person's very much not paying attention other than like looking upward, very optimistic, arms open, and making that forward momentum, and not even allowing their doggy to slow them down. When we're reversed, there is not that forward progression, okay? And Mary says that the full reverse is about not taking risk, or at the other extreme, about taking them extravagantly and recklessly. So it could be somebody who maybe needs to stop and pause and think and stop jumping off so many cliffs, because now we've got a pattern that's not good for us. It could be somebody who, again, is not comfortable being free-spirited. It might not be in their personality, or even their life circumstances. Modern interpretations give the upright fool a kind of divine protection in his innocence, while the reversal depicts him as taking a nasty fall. So it looks like he's falling here. So that would be a different way of looking at the fool. And then she goes into various keywords that could describe it from a traditional viewpoint. And some of those would be like exhaustion, hesitation, lack of material assets, abandonment, carelessness, distraction. Unfortunately, some people may think the fool is not intelligent. And so with that reversal energy, maybe being a little too concerned about, again, what others would think. So I think as a whole so far, it's interesting, I think. So feel free, if you watch this, if it resounds with you, if you see something different with any of the cards I've reviewed tonight, or with their full reversed, feel free to share them with the group or leave it in the commentary as to what you see. I would encourage you, if you have a deck at home, to pull this card out, have it in reverse, and just sit. Sit in front of it and assess how does it make you feel, and how does the imagery take on a different shape and even meaning with it being upside down. So I think that would be some good food for thought. So I think this wraps us up for tonight. And I think the next time I do hop on, we'll do a fun spread from Sasha's book, which, by the way, I could not stop grinning for so long last night. Like, I regret not recording it because I was having a lot of technical difficulties hopping onto it. And once I hopped on and started interacting with her, I wasn't even thinking about playing around finding the record button on my Zoom. But Sasha Graham was awesome. Yeah, and I won't go too further on that because I've already been on here for 39 minutes. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or anything you'd like to add. And I hope you have a restful night. I'll talk to you later. Good night.